G'day and welcome to the program. I'm Connor Duffy here at Sydney's Gordons Bay, where extreme weathers lash the east coast. Later we'll be joined by a photographer who's captured some dramatic images of the king tides. But first, one of the country's most important, expensive and contentious environmental reforms. The Murray Darling Basin authorities released its latest draft plan for the country's most important river system. And it's sticking to its guns, keeping the same cuts to water allocations. Some say the cuts will be the death of rural communities, and conservationists say there's still not enough water for the ecosystem. Fixing the river's been the goal since 2007. 5 years on, the authorities now produced a third draft. It keeps the 2,750 gigalitre return to the rivers, but reduces the amount of groundwater that can be extracted by 1,200 gigalitres. The authority's chair, Craig Knowles, declined to be interviewed, but his boss gave the latest draft a mixed review.
It's a step in the right direction. We are closer to real water reform than we were before this version. It's not yet at a stage where I believe we've got something I could sign off on.
The response from the bush was harsher, with predictions the water cuts would see the demise of some rural communities. They feel the consultation period has been a waste of time.
We still have an unbalanced basin plan. We still clearly have communities, families, farmers and a number of others across the basin in threat.
Conservationists say there's not enough water on offer and the plan will be a $10 billion dud.
It's totally unacceptable that this plan that's been presented to the Minister only delivers on a quarter of the environment and water targets needed with certainty to return this great river system to health.
The states now have 6 weeks to respond. New South Wales and Victoria say too much water is to be returned. South Australia declared war.
I've instructed our lawyers to draft a legal challenge to the plan, so that if this plan is made law, we will be ready to fight it in court.
Some rural communities have already been on edge for years, and it could still be months before a plan is presented to Parliament. Environment Minister Tony Burke will listen to the complaints of the states and make any changes of his own before he presents it to Parliament. Local government leaders fear that councils could be forced to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in carbon tax. Councils are seeking urgent clarification, but the federal government's saying stay calm. Rural and Regional Affairs reporter Sally Sara reports from Wagga Wagga.
Wagga Wagga has found itself in the big league for all the wrong reasons. The council thought it was doing the right thing by submitting estimates of its carbon emissions, but it's wound up on the list of the top 250 emitters in the country.
Because we were too honest, too early.
Wagga is now facing a carbon bill of up to $660,000, money usually spent on services.
But instead it'll be going overseas to buy carbon credits from, in some cases I believe, imaginary forests that, don't exist.
The council has no regrets about being upfront.
I don't think you can be too honest. I think it was the right decision, and like I say, it gave us a much better understanding of the emissions that we were generating.
The council has already reduced its emissions over the past 4 years and hopes the carbon tax bill won't be as big as anticipated. The federal government says most councils don't produce enough emissions to be liable.
It is still very important that there is an incentive for businesses, including local government, to reduce their emissions.
Wagga Wagga has been pushed into the limelight in the debate over the carbon scheme. Many other regional cities and councils across the country are waiting to see what will happen here. What began as a more distant environmental issue has suddenly come into focus. The New South Wales Local Government Association says councils are being kept in the dark by the federal government. Some residents agree.
I don't think that we should have to pay anything because I don't agree with the carbon tax.
Others say the tax won't hit hard.
Nothing. Give away a bit of the punt, a couple of schooners, we're right.
The council won't know its final carbon tax bill until the end of next financial year. In a remote part of central Western Queensland, a determined effort's being made to save a native fish from extinction. Scientists, locals and some heavy machinery are the main tools being used to give the little fish a fighting chance. Nicole Bond reports from Western Queensland.
This is saving a critically endangered fish, Western Queensland style. Edgbaston Station, northeast of Aramac, is home to the only known population of the red-finned blue-eyed fish, and it's in peril.
It's the only fish that we know about from its family in inland Australia, which suggests that it really is a relic species that got isolated and then evolved here.
These Great Artesian Basin springs have been overrun by the introduced and aggressive fish, Gambusia, which was brought in to reduce mosquitoes.
It's probably our worst aquatic invasive species because it's small, because it can live anywhere.
Scientists are hoping that this earth barrier being built behind me will protect an endangered species of red-finned blue-eyed fish from competition by invasive species.
The barrier will stop the Gambusia from entering the spring when there's an overland flow. It's a small job, but operating heavy machinery around springs is precarious work.
These springs that pop up anywhere, it's quite hard to try and keep the truck up on hard ground to cart the dirt in.
While the earthworks are solid, Dr Kerezi is not expecting the wall to guarantee the fish's survival.
This fish could still go extinct pretty easily. You know, it would only take, massive Gambusia colonisation of the last few populations and we'd be nowhere.
It's all part of a 10-year plan, which also includes poisoning and relocating.
A group of Darwin primary school students have won a National Children's Film Award for their animation about green tree frogs.
I'm a green tree frog, sitting on a lily pad.
The animated short has been awarded Best Film for Children aged between 2 and 15 at the Little Big Shots Children's Festival. The students have made the animation as part of their art studies.
Pretty happy because we took a lot of courage and it took a lot of work just to get this big film ready for everyone. Everyone's enjoyed it. We've liked how people have gone, oh, this looks really interesting. I think it's a winner.
Animating is very labour intensive. It's a very meticulous art form that takes a lot of time and patience. The kids often came back in at lunch times or recesses and would continue to work on them.
Ribbit, 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 do the hop with me.
The jury gave the film a perfect score. The animation will premiere at the festival in Melbourne next week and screen in major centres across Australia and overseas. It was a one-off show that won't be repeated for more than a century. Over the course of 6 hours, Venus moved between the Earth and the Sun. In many places, poor weather meant people queuing up at telescopes only got glimpses, but technology came to the rescue, streaming the entire event online. The heavens weren't kind. This Sydney Observatory's dome could barely see the horizon, let alone planets. But rugged up and determined, the Filipovich family weren't giving up.
Yeah, we went to bed early last night and got up early, so they were like, oh, I hope it's worth it.
Miroslav Filipovich has spent years planning for this and didn't let the rain dampen his humour. He reckons the next transit will be better.
Who knows, in 105 years, in 2117, we may have some means of controlling the weather.
The weather this morning was miserable, and many of the sky gazers who trickled in early were pessimistic about whether they'd actually see the transit of Venus. But against the odds, the sun burst out just as it began, and Venus was clearly visible, tracking between the Earth and the sun. It might just be a very slow-moving speck, but it was tracked right around the world.
It's amazing. Certainly couldn't have imagined it to be like that. It was quite clear.
It just looks like a little bite taken out of the very edge of the sun, coming out of the limb of the sun, like the Cookie Monster just had to go with the sun.
8-year-old James Claim didn't let his size stop him seeing history.
When I was in the car coming here, I saw the sun pop out and I was like, yes.
Ellie and Jack Winter and their baby brother James also got a leave pass from school.
It's pretty exciting, and it only happens once every 100 years, so very, very exciting. Yeah. And not everyone will see it, so we feel privileged, don't we, James?
Further north, in sunnier climes, big crowds also turned out in Brisbane and Darwin. The beaches on the east coast have been lashed by some powerful waves and some of the biggest tides on record. Most people, including me, sheltered indoors, but intrepid photographer Zoe Reynolds took to the beach to document it, and she joins me now. Zoe, tell us about how you went about visually documenting these tides.
Well, I've been coming down here for about 6 months now, every month on the new moon in summer and the full moon in winter, just to practice for the king tide, and it was pretty spectacular. Clovelly over there, the kids' beach only had a few feet left on it. The cement platform at Clovelly, where people usually just sort of hang out in their swimmers, completely inundated.
So climate change is obviously a very contentious issue, and a lot of people won't accept that the rises we're seeing in the oceans has anything to do with climate change right now, let alone what's going to happen in 2050. What qualifications do you have to be able to definitively draw that link?
Okay, well, it's not a link that I'm drawing. I mean, what I say to people when they say it's nothing to do with climate change or it's nothing to do with carbon emissions is that, well, look, you know, there seems to be a consensus that we're at the end of an ice age, and the caps are melting. You can go and see for yourself. The sea levels are rising. It's just a question of how much the Industrial Revolution and the carbon emissions are speeding this process up.
Zoe Reynolds, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Brendan.
And a recent national poll has found Australians are less supportive than ever on action to tackle climate change. Now, we also asked mining magnate and political aspirant Clive Palmer for an interview, but didn't hear back. We'll ask again next week and let you know how we go. See you then. In the meantime, you can keep up with all the latest environment news at abc.net.au/environment or follow me on Twitter. Just search for Connor Duffy News. Goodbye.